Hi guys, so I previously posted a video of my birth with my son Greyson. I thought that I would make a video to explain kind of what happened and the whole process of getting to that point. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope that it's informative and it helps everybody else kind of not feel so nervous. It sounds bad, but it really isn't that horrible. I mean, everybody's experience is different, but you never know. You never know what you may or may not experience. So my son was born on November 14th, 2016. Previous to everything happening, on November 9th, 2016, I was in a accident with a drunk driver. It wasn't horrible or anything, but once the ambulance and everything got there, they were taking blood pressure and checking everything with Greyson and making sure he was okay. And at the time, my blood pressure was 180 over 110. And they were like, well, should we give you a ride to the hospital so that you could be monitored just in case? Because at that point I was 36 weeks and like 3 days. And I was like, no, we lived in West Yellowstone, Montana, so a hospital is like an hour plus away, and the particular hospital that I was gonna deliver at was about 2 hours away. So I was like, no, it's okay, my mom will take me and we'll go that way I don't get that extra bill, because hospital bills and ambulance bills are ridiculously expensive. So once we got to the hospital, they monitored me for, I think they kept me for 4 hours. And throughout the whole time, my blood pressure was still sky high. And I was having contractions, but they weren't consistent. So they were like, oh, it's okay, your blood pressure is probably just high because of the accident, and just go home, get rest. And because I had a doctor's appointment, not the next day, but the next day after that. And they're like, just come back on your doctor's appointment, have them check and make sure that your blood pressure has gone down and that everything's okay. Well, when I got home, my midwife had told me it's okay for you to start trying simple things to try and ease your labor, so that you don't have such a hard time going into labor and go past, the 41 weeks. So I tried evening primrose orally. I took, I don't even remember how many milligrams, not that much. But the night after I got back from the hospital, I took the evening primrose, and the next morning we had sex, and then I took another one. And of course that morning is the same morning that I had my doctor's appointment. Well, not an hour after I had taken the medicine, had sex or whatever, we're driving to the hospital. Again, the hospital's 2 hours away. Well, the whole 2 hours that, we were driving there, I started having like contractions, like the real thing, like contractions. They hurt and I couldn't breathe through them. Well, some of them were okay, but the rest of them I just like couldn't talk. I couldn't nothing. So, we got to the hospital because my OB or my midwife office was in the hospital. So we got to the hospital, and they took my blood pressure, still sky high. I don't even remember what it was. I think I have it written down. No, but it was still sky high. So my midwife had me do the P test to test for protein in my urine. And then she checked me vaginally. I was at a -2 station, and I was 1 centimeter. And I was having real contractions. And then of course she come back and said, that yes, you have protein in your urine. You need to go to L&D and you need to be monitored. Well, as the day went by, they were starting to do a 24-hour urine collection, and because I live so far away, they're like, well, we're just gonna keep you overnight for the 24 hours. And they're like, at this point, we're gonna go ahead and give you the steroid shot for Greyson's lungs. So, they got me hooked up to the IV, they gave me, the steroid shot, and I was stuck there all night. It was not fun. They did a lot of stress tests. They were waking me up every like 2 or 3 hours, to do blood pressure again and again and again. And at that point, I was so swollen. I was, having headaches. I wasn't feeling good. My hands were so swollen I couldn't wear my wedding ring. I'd put on my sandals like for 2 seconds and I would have like the indent lines within like 2 seconds. Sorry, he's watching a movie. He loves this movie. But it was crazy. I was so swollen. It was like a balloon. My face was like terribly fat. That whole night was really long. They just kept poking and prodding at me, and with me being so swollen, it was really hard for them to get IVs in. So once they had, blown 12 billion veins and they had got one in there, my hands were sore and they were black and blue, and so it's just really uncomfortable. I got fluids, I got all the, everything. And then, so of course, after the 24-hour urine collection, sorry, I keep looking over here, these are my notes. After the 24-hour urine collection, they, they're like, yeah, you have preeclampsia, so you're gonna come back in, they would come back in a few days. I'd be coming back on the 16th to be induced. So I could go home until the 16th, but then I'd have to come back, and go and get induced. Well, come the 13th, which was what? I think the next day, yeah, the next day after me leaving the hospital, they were like, you need to watch for these certain signs, and if that gets worse, you need to call us. Well, I had my midwife's cell phone number, so I was texting her, every so often. We got along great. I loved her so much. She was so awesome. But, on the 13th, I had gotten a really bad headache, and, like, nothing I was doing was making it go away. I was, trying the Tylenol. I was trying, sleep. I was trying the shower. I was trying, make sure I was drinking water. And at that time, I was drinking, like, a gallon a day because, that was one of the main things you need to stay hydrated because you're so swollen. You need to watch your salt intake and this, and that. But I didn't know what to do. Like, my head just started hurting. And, of course, I was still super swollen and just really uncomfortable. I got to that stage of my pregnancy where everything's shifting and, like, my body is, like, ready. He had dropped, like, significantly. But, so on the 13th, got the headache or whatever. So I texted my midwife and I was like, hey, like, I'm not feeling too great. My headache won't go away. And she's like, well, try taking a Benadryl, try taking a nap and taking a shower and try relaxing. I was like, okay. So, I took a really long shower and I was like, God, watch me, like, be induced tonight. So, of course, like, I shaved everything, like, took a really long shower. And, then I took the Benadryl and I laid down for a little bit and I was like, man, this is just getting worse. Like, it's not working. It's not working at all. So I text her and I let her know, and she's like, okay, well, is there any way you can go get your blood pressure taken somewhere? Well, we had a friend at the time who worked at the police station, and of course they have a blood pressure cuff there. So she ran it over to my house and we took my blood pressure, and I don't remember how much it was, but again, sky high. So I let her know and she's like, okay, well, obviously we can't wait, the 2 more days. So you need to come in and we're gonna induce you tonight. And of course, I'm freaking out. Like, just the day before I had gotten the steroid shots for Greyson's lungs, and, I was like, oh my God, what if, he's gonna come out and he's gonna need to be in the NICU? What if, something's wrong? What if, I have to have a C-section? What if, all these what ifs? And I was scared and terrified, and, it's just being a mom, you're just gonna worry. So, of course, my mom, my brother, and my husband, they were all so, excited and crazy and happy. And the whole drive there, again, 2 hours, everybody was, like freaking out, being happy, and, all of these things. The whole ride there basically was freaking out, and everybody's just excited, and I'm just sitting there freaking out, trying not to cry. Your emotions, like, seriously get the best of you while you're pregnant, and so much so after. Anyway, so when we got there, the hospital was telling me, what was gonna happen and how everything was gonna go. And when they checked me, when I got there, I was already 2 centimeters. So I had been contracting throughout, you know, that time being in the hospital and everything else. I was 2 centimeters, so I gained 1 centimeter. I was still in a -2 station. So the first thing they did was a membrane sweep, and oh my god, let me tell you, those things hurt. Like, I mean, giving birth is, you know, horrible, but, you know, you build up to that pain and, you know, whatever. But for me, oh my god, that membrane sweep, oh, I was crying. Like, it hurt so bad. It was horrible. You know, most women say, you know, it's not that bad, but for me, oh my lord, it hurts so bad. So after they did the membrane sweep, they gave me the, I think it's called Cervidil or whatever. It's the pill that they put up there by your cervix to help thin you out and, you know, do everything with your cervix and soften it. The rest of the night, you know, it was okay. Just had, you know, the Braxton Hicks, you know, small contractions or whatever. Nothing really hurt, you know. Obviously I had some cramps from, you know, the membrane sweep. I was really sore. But about 8 a.m. I had taken 2 cervix softening pills by then. I had got to the hospital about 11 o'clock at night. So this was all on the 13th. And then on the 14th, 8 a.m. in the morning, my normal midwife that I had really liked, unfortunately, had to switch shifts with the other midwife that, you know, she was great. She took care of, you know, me or whatever. But, you know, she's not my favorite. Anyways, they switched or whatever, and, you know, she came in for, you know, her, you know, they switched shifts, so she came in to do her, like, I don't know, make sure she knows what's going on. So they checked me. They told me that I was at 3 centimeters then. And while I'm laying there, while she's checking me, she's like, okay, well, you're still at a negative, or you're at a -1 station now, and you're 3 centimeters. And then she's like, so, you know, I think this process will probably get done sooner rather than later, just because, I mean, all you had was the cervix softening pills, and you're already, you know, 3 centimeters. And she's like, so, and I'm laying there, and she's like, she asked her, the nurse, for the hook, and I was like, hook? What do you mean hook? And all of a sudden she like shoves this like crochet looking hook up my hoo-ha, and she pops my water. Like, she didn't even tell me. That's what she's doing. She pops my water, and I'm like, oh my god, am I peeing everywhere? She's like, no, I just popped your water. And I was like, thanks for telling me. Anyways, so she popped my water, and let me tell you, it is a weird feeling. Like, I seriously felt like I was just peeing all over the place. It was so weird, and, you know, it was really cool because I kind of felt like the pop, and it's kind of like the movies where you feel the pop and it just like kind of goes everywhere, because like my whole water broke all at once. But I was like, oh my god, it feels so weird. Anyway, so right after she popped my water, then she's like, okay, we're gonna give you Pitocin now. And, you know, my whole plan was to try and go as natural as possible. Obviously, I knew that, you know, I might choose to have an epidural, or I might choose to, you know, do all of these things. But of course, everything went out the window as soon as I was getting induced. But she gave me the Pitocin, and right after popping my water. So I labored in bed for a little bit, and then I started getting really like crampy, and like I couldn't relax, and, you know, I started having real contractions at this point, and, you know, I was up, down, up, down, up, down, and I was kind of struggling, and I was like, man, you know what? I'm just gonna go get in the bathtub. So I ran the tub, and for whatever reason, like, the jets kept turning on in the bathtub, and they were so annoying because they were so loud, and like, they were all over the place, and it was driving me insane. So I was like kind of irritated, and then I was trying to get through these contractions because like it was hitting me like a freaking train, because I got my water broke and Pitocin at the same time. So I was trying to labor in there, whatever, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I need to go to the bathroom. So I stood up, had my husband help me to the toilet, and of course, like, I go pee, and then I like go poop, and then all of a sudden, like, as soon as I was like done wiping myself to get back into the tub, like, I couldn't even stand up. Those contractions got real quick. I don't know, maybe it was because like I had pooped or whatever, and like, I don't know, but it was just like, okay, these hurt. So like my husband basically had to carry me from the toilet all the way to the tub because like these contractions were coming less than a minute apart. Like I wasn't even having like 2 seconds to breathe, and it was so terrible because everybody tells you, you know, you always get a break, it's okay, you know, you have a second to relax. I wasn't getting that. So I was getting in the tub, and you know, I was already irritated because the jets kept coming on, and I was just trying to work through these contractions, and finally I was like, oh my god. Okay, so I'd spent like, I don't know, a couple hours in that tub, and I was like, okay, I can't I can't do this anymore. Like I can't even breathe. Like I'm just crying and it hurts so bad. And I was like, okay, epidural right here, thank you. Anyway, so it'd been about an hour before I got my epidural, and to be completely honest with you, my contractions were so intense and so close together that I don't even remember feeling them even giving me the numbing shots. So I don't know if anybody's watched, you know, the videos on epidurals, but usually they give you the numbing shots around the area, and then they do the epidural. I don't remember feeling even the pokes from the numbing shots. I was just in so much pain. Anyway, so, you know, they had the student in there, they had the anesthesiologist in there, and they were, you know, giving it to me, and my husband was doing so amazing. He was, you know, it's okay, because he knew that I was terrified of getting an epidural, like terrified. Like I didn't want it. I was so disappointed already that I was getting it because like I just didn't know how else to have my body relax, because at that point I was fighting my contractions, and that's totally the wrong thing to do, is to fight against your contractions, because you're not going to progress. So you know, I was just trying to relax, and my husband was doing so good, you know, just trying to encourage me and, you know, do everything he could to try and help. But anyway, so I got the epidural, and you know, it worked for about 2 hours, an hour, and I fell asleep and, you know, took a little bit of nap, and then all of a sudden I woke up, and it was just like the train hit me again. And I mean, these contractions weren't as close together anymore, but they were just as painful. And, you know, of course I called the nurse, and I was like, dude, like this epidural's not working anymore. Like my thighs down are numb, but nothing up. And she's like, okay, we'll push this button. So, you know, I pushed the epidural button that gives you the next dose or whatever. Didn't do anything. not a thing. So, she's like, are you sure? Like, should we give it 10 minutes? I was like, you can give it 10 minutes, that's fine, but it's not working. Like, I feel everything. And she was like, okay. She's like, I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, in a few more minutes, we'll do another like button thing. So we did this, you know, like 6-7 times throughout, you know, a few hours or whatever, and it didn't work. They eventually had the anesthesiologist come in again and try doing something directly into the catheter. Still didn't work. So at that point, they might as well have taken out the epidural, because it wasn't working. Everything from my thighs down were numb, but nothing else. So, you know, of course I was writing in pain or whatever, and then I started going through like the transition. And I think at that point, let's see, at that point, it was about 4:30. They decided to check me. I was at a 4 centimeter, or I was at a 6 centimeter, sorry. And the nurses come in, and they're like, okay, well, since your epidural is not working or whatever, we're gonna try something. And so they gave me this peanut ball. Oh my god. So this peanut ball, they had me lay on my side and put the peanut ball between my legs. Super uncomfortable to lay with, first of all, just because it's so big. But the whole purpose is to excuse me, to open your hips. And oh my gosh, I had it like in between my legs for about 45 minutes. And they came in and checked me again. I was at a 9 centimeter. So I dilated 3 centimeters in 45 minutes because of this peanut ball. And of course, the whole time I'm just like, you know, like whining. I didn't really cry as much as I whined. Like, I didn't scream, I didn't yell or nothing, I just whined. Like, I'd wake up out of like this sleep, but it wasn't really sleep. I would wake up and I'd just start crying, and then as soon as the contraction was gone, I was like, okay, and I would rest again. But it was just horrible. So, after that, they, you know, once I was to the 9, they're like, okay, well, we need you to sit up, and spread your legs, like, kind of like spread eagle, kind of. And they're like, at this point we need you to sit up so that we can get baby to go further down. So he had gone further down because of the peanut ball, but I had dilated more than him going down. So I sat up, and the whole time, I was just, waking up, crying, and then resting again, and waking up and crying, resting again. Crying and whining. I didn't really cry. I guess I did cry. I don't know. It's really hard to remember just because it was like so out of it. I was in so much pain. I wasn't really thinking about anything. And at this point, my mom and my brother, they had been going in and out of the room because we had been there since 11 o'clock the previous night. My husband, he slept with me that night, but then he was awake the whole time helping me and doing whatever he could. Anyway, so they sat me up, and I was sitting there for about, I don't know, 2 hours. I just was having a hard time progressing to, the full 10. Anyway, so after the 2 hours, they did check me, and I was a 9 3/4 centimeters. So they decided, well, maybe we can do some practice pushing, and maybe we can get, your cervix pushed over that little, ledge right there. So I did some practice pushing. I did it for about half an hour. And then my midwife came in, and she's like, okay, she's like, I think we got your cervix out of the way, so let's go ahead and start pushing completely. And so at that point, I'd been pushing for half an hour, and then I started pushing, for real pushing, and I was having like a hard time because, this is my first kid. I was having a hard time to like figure out where to push. Like I felt everything, and I felt like where the pressure was, and like my body was doing it for me, but I was just like, oh my god, get this kid out of me because the shit hurts. So I was like trying to figure out like what point, like in my head I was visualizing like what is the focal point and where is the exact like place to push. I was just having such a hard time, and on my birth plan I had specifically said, I don't want people counting like, the 1, 2. I didn't want anybody doing that because for me it was like my body's gonna do it, and I don't like people yelling at me. So I was doing it, at this point by myself, and then that's where my birth video kicks in. Is I'm pushing, and then finally my midwife starts like she was pushing on, how do you say it, the perineum or whatever. She was using her finger to push on it because his head was starting to crown, so she was trying to stretch it a little bit. And I was like, oh my god, that's exactly where I need to push. So like I started pushing right there, like visualizing that point and pushing towards that point. And that's when he like actually started moving really easily. And at that point, I was really thankful to have been pushing for that long because I felt like my body had time to stretch out a little bit, and I had time to ready my body to actually go for like the home run or whatever. So at 9:50, of course, he was born. I got 1 stitch, and I did start bleeding a little bit more than they would have liked. So they did an internal and external massage on my uterus to try and make it stop bleeding. I didn't need a transfusion or anything, but I did bleed a little bit more than was liked. I delivered my placenta about 10 minutes after having him. His lungs ended up being great. They just kept him in the nursery overnight. They would bring him every 3 hours for feeding, but they kept him overnight in the nursery to monitor his oxygen and everything, and he was fine. He did great, no issues. He was 6 pounds 9 ounces. He was 21 inches. He was, a pretty decently big baby for 36 weeks and 6 days. So he was, he was great. He was a good baby. He, had no health issues, no anything. He was great. And, I was so prepared for the worst because every time, I've talked to the nurses about him being so early, they're like, well, boys develop slower than the girls, so when the boys are delivered a little bit earlier, there's more concern. And of course, I just, being a mom, I was scared, I didn't want anything to happen to my baby, so. But he was perfectly healthy. He was great. My husband was amazing. He was a great support system for me, and, we're pregnant with our second baby right now. So I'm really excited to experience that whole thing again, and for Greyson to be a big brother, because at this point he's a year and a half. Well, in a few days he's a year and a half, but he's great. He's a good kid. We breastfed for 14 months. You know, we're doing great. He's a good kid, and you know, I'm really excited and happy about having babies. I love babies. At some point, you know, I'd like to be more involved in like the medical side of that, and maybe being a doula or a midwife or something. I love the whole process, and I'm just really excited for this baby. My only hope is that, you know, I won't have preeclampsia again, and I'll be able to do it naturally, because, you know, every day now I kind of suffer with, you know, the pain of having the epidural in my back. I have backaches every day in the exact same place I got an epidural. It just makes me angry, because like I shouldn't have got the epidural. It didn't work. It didn't help me. Maybe for 2 hours I got a nap, but it didn't, you know, it didn't help me. And I was just disappointed in myself for even like giving into it. But it doesn't really matter at this point, because my kid was born healthy, and you know, that's all that matters. But I don't know, I'm just excited for the second baby, and I'm just hoping that it kind of goes how I want it to. Obviously, you know, that doesn't usually happen, but you know, all in all, it was okay. You know, the induction process wasn't, I mean, I'm not going to say it was great, but it wasn't like absolutely terrifying. It hurts a lot more than I would think natural birth, just because your body is being forced into labor. If I can avoid it, I will. I don't want to be induced again. Pitocin, like as soon as I got that Pitocin and my water was broken at the same time, it was just like, that was it. I was really lucky. I only had like a 23-hour labor. So, you know, I got really lucky. Some moms, you know, who get induced are in there for 24 plus. But, you know, as I said, like, I'm just really glad that everything went well, and, you know, everything happens for a reason or whatever. But, yeah, so that was my birth story. If you're interested in seeing the actual delivery, it does have a little bit more graphic content. And I think that it's good for everybody to watch, just because for me it helped me understand, like, oh yeah, that's how it works, you know, because I never had a baby. But if you are gonna watch it, it does show all the nitty-gritty. So view at your own discretion or whatever. Anyways, I hope that this was really informative, and I hope y'all have a good day. Thanks.